Welcome to Books and Brews. I believe this is episode number 10, but I'm usually busy managing a farm, so I'm not very good at keeping track. So I am very pleased today to welcome Justin Winstead. So Justin, in this Books and Brews Light format, I'm letting the guests do the introduction. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. Excited about spending this time with you. And some people right now are asking themselves, what is that accent? What am I hearing? And so a little bit about myself, I'll do it in that regard. I'm originally from Louisiana, so I'm a mixture of a country boy and a Cajun boy. And then now I live in Texas. So when you sprinkle in a little bit of Texas twang with the country and Cajun, this is what you get. And that is part of my story, is moving from Louisiana to Texas. I am married. I've got 4 kiddos. I am a leadership development and team culture coach. And I work with solopreneurs and companies like Chick-fil-A. And about half of my time is spent virtual, half of it's in person. And it doesn't matter where it is or the format. My goal is always to help people think differently, to believe better, to act healthier in order to grow themselves and have a more positive impact on this world that we share together. And so that's a little bit about me.
That's fantastic. And I'm a huge proponent of trying to leave the world better than we found it. Not sure how we're doing on that. I would like to ask people before we dive in to please like, share, subscribe, and leave comments. We are more than ready to start growing our channel and really making it more professional. You can also get the Books and Brews mug. It's at Zazzle. We actually have a new one. And our new one that reflects our new co-host accidentally got sent to my old home in Duluth. So if you're watching, please send it back. It would be really nice. And please visit our sponsor, Gabriel's Horn. So I found your comments about accent entertaining because I've just moved to the South. And I didn't really think of Tennessee as being the South. So I was completely unprepared for the deep South accents here. And I want to say I'm getting used to it, but I'm not sure I am. Sometimes people say something, and like somebody said to me something the other day about our chicken feed. And I kept going, what? Fade? Fade? What's fading? And I don't know. He finally got it through to me. So I'm still adjusting my ear to that. But maybe people find me hard to understand here too. I don't know. Nobody said they do. But tell us about your book and what inspired you to write it.
Yeah. So that's, love that. Love going straight into it because that's really what's top of mind right now. My book is releasing on October 1st, 2024, and it is titled Become an Improver. And it's a challenge to escape average and unleash greatness. And so the idea is that we all struggle with this challenge, this daily challenge of just the grind of what it is to just try to live life and get all the stuff done. And it's just the to-do list is never ending. And we all have a certain natural way about us where we war against certain tendencies like our comfort zone or, being beholden to our fears or limiting beliefs. And so that's the average way of living. But yet I believe that we were made for greatness. I believe each person has it within them to leave the world better than they found it, to accomplish more than they dreamed possible, to live a life that is better than they even thought they would live as they were growing up and imagining their future. That there's a greatness there to be had. And so the heartbeat of this book is to acknowledge the fact that it is a challenge, this life that we live, but then also to issue a challenge to rise above, to take on certain mindsets, attitudes, and have certain habits and actions that can lead you to live your best life.
And again, that is such an important goal. And I think a lot of people don't even think in those terms. Now, I have to admit, I am not drinking the drink I would have chosen for your book. Your book is all about self-improvement. And so the only improvement I need right now is to stop coughing from these allergies. So I have cold water and I have throat coat tea. But if I had gone out and gotten what I planned on, I would have gotten a kombucha drink. I think am I saying that correctly?
Sure, yeah.
Because that's, as far as I've heard, all about self-improvement and getting healthier. So I thought that would be appropriate, but I thought it great to go and buy it. So what are
Well,
you
you're in
drinking
Tennessee. Go
today?
get you a hottie toddy to help out with that scratchy throat.
Oh,
So.
yeah. I love hottie toddies mainly because I used to play trombone in a big band, and there is a jazz piece called Hot Toddy, and it has the coolest trombone bass line ever written. So I don't actually like hot toddies that much, but I like drinking them because it makes me think of that. So,
Well, hey, while we're on the topic of drinking, I want to share with you another funny that may not tie in with the theme of the podcast, but this is
that's
a fun
okay.
story. Before going into leadership development and team culture training, I had an insurance agency, and the name of my insurance agency, it was a franchise. It was Goosehead Insurance. Well, the local newspaper came out to cover my ribbon cutting when I opened up, but they got the name wrong on the headline. And they advertised Goose Island has ribbon cutting in Keller. Well, Goose Island is a brewery. So my first few weeks of trying to sell insurance, people were trying to make beer orders. So
That's hilarious. Yeah, I had a story like that. I had a publicist for a while, and she got me onto the first page, I think, of the B section of the Minneapolis Star Tribune the day after Thanksgiving. So it was great timing. And I was so excited. Now I'm going to sell a whole ton of books. Instead, I got about 5,000 phone calls asking me to publish their books for them. And I was just like, no, I can publish for you, but I don't want to. I want you to buy my book. So
yes.
that kind of backfired a little bit, but such is life. So your book sprang from your experience of your personal experience. And I think that's very important because a lot of people see someone who's doing well in life and they go, oh, well, you must have had every advantage. But tell us something about what kind of rural or poverty sort of background you grew up in, and how did you get from there to here?
Yeah, you are right. This book was written more from the heart, not the head. This was a lot of my personal experience, and really it was written more so for anybody. It was written for my kids because I wanted them to have some of the background that maybe they don't see daily, in our home, because they're living a different life than I live. So if we rewind the clock back to my childhood, one of my earliest memories was a snake had gotten in our house because we didn't even have solid flooring in the trailer house that we were living in.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember a snake coming in, and I had to rescue Mom from that. And when it would rain, we would get buckets and bowls to catch the drops so the house didn't flood. And my dad was a hardworking man, but he had dropped out of high school and just wasn't making a lot of income. My mom was actually a public school teacher, and so she had some income there, but the financial literacy was just really low. And I had siblings, so we really struggled in a lot of ways coming up. Now, everything's relative. Compared to third world countries, we actually had quite a few blessings, and life was okay.
You weren't living in a cardboard box.
That's exactly right. And so, I put all this in that context of, yes, everything's relative. But when I went to school, there were the haves and the have-nots, and I was on the have-nots side of the equation. Everybody else drove nicer vehicles, wore nicer clothes, said nicer things, had nicer experiences. And there was definitely this sense of insecurity. There was a sense of feeling inferior to others and not really feeling like I belonged. One of my coping mechanisms was to project, to try to come across as stronger and smarter and more attractive than I really, truly was. And even today, all these decades later, I still have to guard against those things that happen because I can have a tendency to want to try to project strength that really isn't there. And but one of the big mindsets that happened during that time was just this paradigm of viewing life where I thought money was bad, rich people were evil, and if you were successful in business, you must have cheated your way to get there. And that was part of my coping.
That's very interesting. And did you get that attitude from your parents? Did you kind of decide it for yourself? Did you get it from politicians
Yeah.
talking about,
It's hard to know exactly, but I would say that it was a mixture. I don't remember my parents ever explicitly saying things. One thing about it is, even though we lacked in a lot of ways, there was never a sense of ingratitude from my parents or a sense of envy. They just were doing the best they could. But I think some of it was entertainment. I was really heavy on TV shows and movies. And so I think that pop culture tends to try to reinforce this idea, which is always ironic. It's always the rich people telling everybody else how bad money is. It's the ones fluting around on their jets telling everybody how bad global warming, it's very, but I think that was where some of that came from. But then also as a middle schooler, I got involved in church. I became a Christian of my own choosing. My family was not in church, but I started going, and there was some of that message was reinforced through my faith, because there are scriptures that speak about the dangers of money and those kinds of things. And some people that I was surrounded with had misinterpreted some of the passages to say that, that all money is bad. And they really took the things about greed and applied them to just trying to be profitable. And they would conflate these ideas. I didn't know that at the time. But as my eyes began to open up later, I realized one of the things was somebody shared a powerful phrase with me, and it changed my life. And they said, because I was trying to do ministry, I ended up going into the ministry out of high school. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go serve in the church world, the nonprofit charity world. And because I had such a bad view of money and such a low financial literacy around it, I was really struggling. I was trying to buy people lunch, and my checking account was in the negative. And it's really hard to buy people lunch when you don't actually have money for your own lunch. And someone introduced me to the phrase, and the phrase was, where there is no margin, there is no ministry. And I realized that I was trying to do ministry out of a deficit. And what you have to do if you want to serve people, if you want to make the world better, if you want to lift up others, you have to create margin in your own life. So you have to look in the mirror and say, I can't be overextended on my time. I can't be emotionally disheveled and unbalanced and unstable. I can't be financially in the hole and expect to share my time, my emotions, and my money with people, because I don't have it. So in order for me to give it, I've got to create more.
Right. That is an excellent point. And I think that's exactly why, who's creating the jobs? Usually it's the people who either have money or are willing to work 18, 19 hours a day in order to build the business. And I think that's what we're doing here. We have moved to acreage. We are working on learning to farm and raise animals. And as a result, we have been able to create a job. We now have someone helping. And that actually brings me to a question I had. This has been a fascinating topic to me all my life. Why is it that some people are in poverty and they lift themselves out of it and they have this can-do attitude, and other people just don't? And we've had experiences with two people we hired in the last couple months, where one, we gave him an opportunity. He blew it in every possible way. The other also grew up in poverty like yourself. He's been telling me a bit about that. And yet nothing stops him. He just says, okay, well, the college football didn't work out due to an injury. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Well, this job proved to be a very bad situation. Well, I'm going to leave and I'm going to find something better. He said he applied to 30 jobs before he found someone who would give him part-time work that he needed so he can go to school and learn a trade that's going to make him very good money. So he's very much in your situation. But both of these are people who could both have done the same thing. One did and one didn't. In your experience, what makes the difference?
Well, there's an old saying that I like, but I've tweaked a little bit to I think, to be more accurate. The old saying is, you will be the same person 10 years from now that you are today, except for the books you read and the people you meet. And I like that saying, but I think it needs to be fine-tuned a little bit. So the way I would paraphrase it would be, you'll be the same person 10 years from now that you are today, except for the content you absorb and the connections you make. Because it's not just about reading a book or meeting a person. It's about actually internalizing content, internalizing messages. And it's about truly not just meeting people. You can have thousands of Facebook or LinkedIn or TikTok followers or all of that, but that's not a connection. You've really got to connect with people. And so to me, if you take those two things, the content that you're letting in and the connections that you're making, that is the primary difference that causes one person's life trajectory to be bent upwards and the other person's to stay stagnant. Is there was somebody who maybe offered a hand to this person, and maybe this other one didn't get offered a hand. But I think at the end of the day, we all get opportunities, but not everyone takes advantage of opportunities to make the connection and to receive the content. I think the positive messages are there, but some people just don't want to receive those messages.
Right.
I've got one of the models in my book is called the input-output cycle. And essentially what we look at in this is that your reality and your results are a result of your habits and processes that you have in place. Well, your habits and processes are a result of your individual actions, which come from your attitudes and beliefs, which come from the thoughts that you choose to think and that you allow into your head. So if you reverse engineer that, you go through those steps. So change your thoughts, you change your attitudes. Change your attitudes, you have different actions. You have different actions, you create different habits. Different habits create a different life. So to me, the nugget to answer your question, it all goes back to what are you thinking? What are the thoughts you're putting in your head? And that is the most powerful sources of your thoughts are the content you choose and the people that you have around you.
And I think what I've seen over the course of my life is that the people who don't change are always blaming someone else.
Yes.
And they're not willing to look at themselves. And I guess I'm curious if you have any thoughts on where even that root attitude comes from. It seems to me, and I hope I'm wrong, it seems to me that some people are just born with a better ability to say, let's look at myself and what I can do. And some people just seem to be born with this chip on their shoulder, or whatever attitude it happens to be that's beneficial or harmful. Would you think that some people just are born with those different temperaments, and how do you help them if they are?
So I believe part of it is true. So when I'm guiding people in their development, one of the things I'll share with them is that you, as an individual, what you do and who you are is a result of nature, nurture, and choice. So part of it is the nature, and it's your natural wiring of the brain, and it is the way that you are just developed. And we do have a certain propensity from birth to behave a certain way and to go a certain way. But that propensity is shaped by the nurture that we have as we grow up, and then as we continue to mature, the choices we make on our own. And so while we can't go back and change our nature, mostly, there are some things in our nature that we can change, because your brain does rewire, and there are synapses and neurons that fire in different ways where you can change your personality to some degree and things like that. But mostly you can't change your nature. Your tendencies will remain the same. But what you can change is you can change the choices you make and who you allow to nurture you in your environment. That's why as parents, if we have kids, we know that we always want them to go with the right crowd, or, we want them to have good friends.
So important.
Because their choices will be shaped not only by how their nature is, but how their nurture is with their friendships. So
Right.
So I think it's within someone's power to change their trajectory and to go against their nature in a healthy way, which, by the way, that's a controversial statement I just made, because historically, whether from a religious or just a purely philosophical vantage point, we understood that our nature in some ways is meant to protect us, but in other ways, our nature causes us to go to destruction and selfishness. And, my nature wants to sit at home and eat Cheetos and drink soda and not do any, my nature can be bad.
Mhm.
And we've always understood that we needed to have self-control and willpower and be disciplined. It's only recently that the attitude of our culture has shifted to, well, you need to obey your nature, and you need to let whatever you feel comfortable, whatever your truth is, whatever your natural desires are, you obey them. And I think that that's why we're seeing, in part, the mental health crisis that we're dealing with. We're seeing a lack of productivity in the world, even though we should have more production than ever with all the technology that we have.
Right.
But people are not becoming the best versions of themselves when they choose to just be a victim of, well, this is the way I was born. I can't
And this is the
rise
world
above.
around me. I
What's that?
want to throw in a comment on this. My husband is actually working on a book called First Principles. And in it, he studies how all the major world codes of ethics and conduct all seem to say the same things. So he's looking at the Ten Commandments, of course. I think it's called the Busho Law, some of the codes of ethics of ancient Japan, the Boy Scout law. He's taking all of these and showing how in our nature, we all know that these are the proper ways to behave. And what did you just say? There was a reason I brought that up. Mental illness.
Yeah.
In the course of working on this book, he did a deep dive into the history of mental illness and found out that it really didn't exist until all the nihilist philosophers started spreading their ideas. And as a society, we started imbibing this idea that we're just kind of nothing. We're just animals. We're just here and we're gone. There's no greater purpose. And when those ideas spread through society, that's when we started seeing mental illness.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating. And I did want to ask, before I get sidetracked on what I should naturally ask after that, what is excellence to your mind? You have a goal of people striving for excellence.
Yeah. So what I'd love to do is tell you a little bit of the origin of where I came up with improver, because it'll tie in with that. So there is an ancient personality typing system called the Enneagram. Have you ever heard of Enneagram?
Yes.
All right. So ones on the Enneagram historically were referred to as perfectionists. And whenever I learned about the Enneagram and did the assessments and kind of figured out which one that I aligned with, it turned out to be ones, which I didn't actually like, because I loved eights are called challengers, sevens are called enthusiasts. I like those things that sounded more fun and energetic, but it just wasn't truly me. And I was at a conference, and one of the experts on the Enneagram, Ian Crone, who wrote The Road Back to You, he stated from the stage that we have mislabeled ones. It's the only one of the 9 Enneagram personalities that has a negative connotation to it. To be an enthusiast is fun. To be a helper is fun. To be a peacemaker is good. But to be a perfectionist, that's kind of negative. He said it's really not perfectionism. He said what it really is they're trying to be improvers. They just like things to be better. They want to lift up. They want, and here was the key phrase where it really clicked with me. He said improvers want things to reach their true and fullest potential. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be the greatest potential. And that's where it clicked for me, that's what I always wanted. I always felt misunderstood. I always felt like I'm not trying to nitpick you. I'm not trying to be a perfectionist, but I see more in you and I want to bring that out. I'm not calling you out. I'm calling you up. So to answer your question about excellence, one way that I see excellence is that whatever it is reaching its fullest potential. It is being the best version of whatever that is. The other way I kind of view excellence is, so potential is one word. The other one would be purpose. Excellence is when everything has maxed out its purpose. It's living at the peak of its intended purpose. So when you have something that has intention and purpose, and it's reaching its potential in that, and those get matched together, I think that's a very excellent thing, regardless of any other circumstance around it.
Yeah, and you have a goal of 2.5 million in 10 years, becoming improvers, I think is how you phrased it. Why 2.5 million? Why not 1 million? Why not 10 million?
You know what? It's a great question, and I don't have an awesome answer for it, except for to tell you, like I said, I am a Christian, and I do pray, and I have a way that I feel like helps me to hear what my purpose is. And as I got to that point about my vision, that was the number that felt impressed on my heart and mind. And it just, I thought, I did do a little bit of research though, and there were some things that led me to that. And I know one of them was, had to do with a certain percentage of the world population. But yeah, there's not a huge magic number. It was basically just, this is what I think I'm supposed to do. And it felt significant. 1 million felt too small. Anything above that felt too big. It just felt like 2.5 is the number.
That's great. And you had talked about faith. Tell us a little bit about how faith has influenced your life and made you an improver and want to help other people be an improver.
Yeah. Well, faith has been extremely instrumental in my journey. And one of the taglines that I have in the book, it's actually a tagline in our company. It's good and getting better. And so the heartbeat of an improver is that they have gratitude for what is. They've learned to be content, but not complacent. They celebrate their wins and their gains while still acknowledging that there's gaps that are out there. So that's the balance that an improver is walking. Well, part of that way of viewing the world stems from my faith. And I have a lot of respect for most of the world's religions and the inspiration that they have to try to cause people to live for their fellow man, to have self-control, to have integrity, etc. But the one thing that sets Christianity apart from the other religions of the world is that Christianity is built on this idea that you are made good by the actions of someone else. Jesus actually made me good, but yet I'm still in the process of getting better. Theologically, it's called justification. I've been justified. I'm no longer guilty in the eyes of God. I'm clean, I'm pure, I'm free, but yet I'm in the process of being sanctified. I'm getting better. And so that's my ultimate framework. I also think about heaven. And for me, heaven is going to be receiving all of the goodness that God has, all of his grace and all of the blessings I could ever imagine. So I'm receiving the good, but at the same time, I'm giving back glory and praise. And like, that's this eternal relationship that we'll have where he blesses and we bless back. And I think that's that cycle of good and getting better.
That's wonderful. Do you have a reading ready for us?
Sure. Yeah, I think I've got so many ways I could go, but we discussed Goosehead earlier, and then we also talked about the being willing to change. And so there's a section in here that has to do with adaptability. And do I have time to tell a quick story before the reading?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So several years back, I got a chance to meet Robert Herjavec from the Shark Tank. And so if anybody's watched the Shark Tank, Mark Cuban was sitting on one end, Robert was usually on the opposite end with the comb over, and very successful person. And Robert shared the story that he and the other sharks were off air one day, and they were discussing how did they all get to where they were, because they were men, women, they were different races, different countries of origin. They had different educational levels. They had different industries that they were serving in. And so they were trying to figure out what is our common denominator that caused each of us to go from where we were to massively successful. And you can imagine the types of words that got thrown out. And some of them sounded right, but then there was always one shark that would shoot it down. For an example would be somebody said, oh, we're really passionate about, our companies and the things that we bring to market. And Mr. Wonderful chimes in and says, well, I'm not passionate about those things. I'm just greedy. Like, he just admits it. He's like, I just want money. I don't even care about the widgets. And so someone else said, well, it's actually hard work and grit and determination, that hustle. That's what gets us here. And Robert Herjavec said, no, I've rolled my sleeves up and got to work, but he said, I think I've been borderline lazy, which is how I've become successful, because I developed efficient systems that could run without me. And I learned how to automate things. And so he's like, I really don't like to work that hard, you know? So they had this for a while. And then finally someone said a word, and all the sharks looked at one another and they nodded and was like, that's it. And the word was adaptability. And they felt like the common denominator for them was the ability to change, to be nimble, to adjust to their surroundings and pivot as necessary. And that really resonated with me, because as an improver, part of the thing we're always doing is we're always adapting. We're hanging on to the good while still seeing what can get better. There's an excellent book title out there called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Oh,
and
interesting.
sometimes the things that get us to a level of success won't get us to the next level. So
I find that interesting for authors, because this applies to marketing, that sometimes what works one year doesn't work another year. And that fits right in with what you just said. And you have to keep adapting.
Keep reinventing yourself, and don't let ego get in the way. So that's the context of this part. This is about 3/4 of the way through the book. It's a chapter called Willing to Change. And I'll just kind of pick up in the middle of the chapter here. And let me look at the time here. Okay. So it says, improvers that adapt don't fear the future, and they don't fret over change. The classic book, Who Moved My Cheese, is an amusing reminder of this principle. You can hem and haw as you overthink and give way to perfectionist tendencies, or you can sniff and scurry by stepping into action and following your instincts to new opportunities. But change is difficult and uncomfortable, so we'll spend this chapter getting informed and motivated for positive change. One of the most current examples of the following the Move My Cheese principle is that of the Stanley brand of drinkware. Founded in 1913 by William Stanley Jr., the company invented the all-steel vacuum bottle, providing customers with a durable, portable, and effective beverage container. William Stanley's death a few years later after the launch did not dissuade the company from continuing to innovate and expand its product line, eventually creating a variety of jugs, beverage servers, and decanters. In 2016, they introduced the 40-ounce quencher bottle, which soon thereafter catapulted Stanley to incredible new heights. Fueled by unexpected viral attention on social media platforms like TikTok, positive exposure to the product increased exponentially. Observing a massive surge in sales, the company scrambled to ramp up its production capacity. However, demand outpaced supply. The item was sold out nationwide, which only increased its appeal due to the principle of exclusivity. This is where Stanley began to shine as they invested in modern technology, expanded facilities, and formed new partnerships to serve their growing market. They pivoted their marketing strategies to reach their online audience and optimize their distribution channels to get their products into the hand of retailers and consumers. Riding the wave of momentum, they expanded the product line to include new colors, sizes, and features to meet the needs and preferences of their audience. The agility and responsiveness of Stanley were rewarded as their annual sales skyrocketed from $70 million in 2019 to $750 million in 2023. The growth of the company and brand was initialized by innovating a new product and maximized by adapting to consumer needs in a shifting landscape. While their story is remarkable, it's not a miracle. People reach new heights and achieve higher levels of success than they dreamed possible every day by staying creative, innovative, and adaptive. And you can likewise be better personally and professionally if you are willing to choose that mindset.
That is a fantastic reading. So your book comes out October 1st, and hopefully this will be up before that. Today is September 24th. It is my birthday, so.
Oh, happy birthday. Yay.
Thank you. Hopefully there's cake and ice cream in my future. Actually, here's a funny story. Speaking of adaptability, I have 9 kids.
Oh my goodness.
I have learned and now my stepdaughter. So we have 10 together. I've learned a lot of adaptability. So one year, my oldest son was 16, I think. And I think it was my birthday. It was somebody's birthday because we had a lot of birthdays. And he jokingly, took I'll demonstrate with my glasses. There was the scoop of ice cream. He pulled the scoop back and I opened my mouth like, being funny. And he flipped it, let it go. And amazingly, the scoop of ice cream went right into my mouth. So that is why, as long as any of my kids were still home, we had a tradition of flipping the ice cream and seeing if we could repeat that. We've never been able to repeat that.
How fun.
But maybe tonight. One of my sons is here visiting, so we'll see. But where can people find you online?
Yeah, so for the book, you can go to improverbook.com. It is available for pre-order even now. So improverbook.com has all the info there. It's also available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, etc. My company website is improvergroup.com. Of course, on socials, you can find me Justin Winstead, or you can also search for Improver Coach or Improver Group, and you'll find our various pages there. LinkedIn is probably where I hang out the most, and Facebook. So,
can you spell your last name?
Yeah, it's like Instead with a W, Winstead. And
Great way of remembering.
Yeah, and if you look up Justin Winstead Improver on social or online, you'll find me there. And also as a gift, if you go to improvergroup.com, there's some free resources there. One of those is a 5 voices assessment that if you're trying to figure out how you like to lead and influence people, including your writing, you can take the assessment and it'll tell you what your primary voice is. There's 5 primary voices, so you can do that. And there's some other assessments as well, but that one's available for free.
I thought I turned off the volume and it keeps making noises at me. Sorry.
That's all good.
Got a voicemail. Yeah. So I can be found at lauravosica.com, V as in Victor, OSIKA, and at gabrielshornbooks.com, who's our sponsor, and at booksandbrews.net, of course. And you can also find our exciting farm life at www.glenmerrillfarms.wordpress.com. And readers of my books will recognize the word Glen Merrill. It's the name of the fictional castle, and it means the Glen of Miracles. So we live on a mountaintop, but too bad, we're still called Glen of Miracles. And so if you go to those pages, you can see our adorable little bunnies and our adorable, not so little sheep. So thank you so much for being on the program. I need something to cheers with.
There you go. Yeah. Hey, appreciate it. Thank you.